Welcome to Rewiring Health, where you'll find a combination of science and spirituality to reclaim your health and realize your worth. I'm your host, Kelly Kessler, and I'm on a mission to help you stop self-abandoning and start embracing yourself. Join me as we dive into heart-centered, authentic conversations that not only will inspire you, but help you unlock a whole new perspective. You are here for a reason. Now let's dive in. The last year and a half of my life have been the most painful, the most grief-stricken, the most heartbreaking, and tumultuous year and a half of my life. And it's also been the most transformational. And looking back on my experience in the last year and a half, it started with my brother passing away, which completely rocked my world and was completely unexpected. And then dealing with some major turmoil in other relationships in my life. And this really became such a trying year for me. And if I had gone through this year and a half, 6, 7 years ago, I would not have handled it nearly as well as I've navigated it in the last year and a half. And there were many things that I have learned about myself and learned about how to go through some of the most challenging things in my life and how I can empower myself through those. And as I share these, in no way do I want to downplay the immensity of the grief and emotions that come along with this. There are moments when you feel like just getting out of bed is challenging. There are moments when you feel like it's so difficult to show up in the world and be functional because you're dealing with so much. And that is part of living an empowered life, is honoring yourself and recognizing that with joy in life comes grief, and that oftentimes these coexist, in that you can enjoy a special moment with your child, but also be dealing with a lot of grief in your heart, and knowing that it's okay to feel that. And so I want to share with you 3 transformational aspects that I've really embodied in my life that have made such a difference in the level of suffering that I probably would have gone through in this past year and a half if I had not made these changes in how I see the world and how I see myself. The first one is not staying in your head. And so this was something that was really transformational in my life. I was someone who was very intellectualizing. I would try to think my way through everything. I would try to problem solve. I would try to replay situations and how I could have done it differently, and feeling so guilt-stricken for maybe not being perfect in scenarios, and just really, really stuck in my head with so many scenarios. And it became menacing. And this is something that I think so many of us struggle with, that we are so in our heads, so overthinking things, so much pressure that we put on ourselves to feel like we have to function and show up and try to change things by thinking our way through it. And really, just that thinking is a protective aspect, that we are so fearful that it feels like we have some sense of control in our lives when we overthink it and think of every possible scenario that could happen and how we could replay these scenarios that have happened. And this is just one way that we keep ourselves stuck when we're in our head. And a big transition I've made in my life is taking myself out of my head and moving myself into my body. And what this has done for me is being able to recognize where I am and how I'm feeling in this moment and what I need in this moment. When I was in my head, I couldn't even tell you what I needed because I was so bombarded by things and so in a survival mode that it was like shut down. There was no logical thinking. It was just overthinking. And there was no way forward by living like that. But when I move into my body, I can really start to understand where I am, what I need in this moment. And what I mean is that moving into my body, I could sense and scan how I'm feeling. Where is there constriction in my body? Where is there tightness? How is my body responding? And it allowed me to really just ground myself in some of these moments, especially when in these really emotionally charged moments, I could really just anchor into how my body was responding and really allow myself to move through that in a way that was with more flow and grace rather than feeling like I'm just coming up against my own thoughts. Part of moving into my body was also tuning into my heart. And so, in some of the most challenging times, I would reflect on things I had to be grateful for. And that allowed me to release some of the really, really tough emotions. And at the same time, I also honor those emotions and recognizing that that is all part of the journey. And so, if we can take ourselves out of our heads and move ourselves into our body, we can start to move ourselves forward and really recognize what are we feeling in this moment? What is our true experience? What is our body saying it needs in this moment? And then move forward from that point on. Number two, which was so transformational in my life, is no longer dismissing my feelings or downplaying my experience. This is something I did for years, is downplay how I was feeling or dismissing how I was feeling because it was almost like numbing. I could just move forward, I thought, by downplaying the extent of it. And really, I end up just gaslighting myself, just making myself feel like, meh, it wasn't as bad as maybe you think it is, or you're overdoing it, or you're too emotional about this, or you don't need to think about that anymore. Just move on and start being productive. But really, it's actually the opposite. We have to honor our emotions and our experience and really just treat ourselves like our own parent. And in these moments where we feel some of this like deep grief and sadness, we have to say, I understand why you feel this. You've gone through a lot this year, or you're feeling any kind of emotion and saying, like, it's okay to feel that. Give yourself that permission of like, let it out. If you need to go cry, if you need to experience any anger or whatever it is, give yourself that freedom to feel some of these emotions. It was only when I started to allow myself to experience emotions that I realized how much I had suppressed emotions for so long. I felt like I couldn't be angry like that. That's not something that I even felt comfortable doing, or I felt shameful if I felt angry about something. And that grief or sadness, it would be so hard sometimes to even allow it to come up to the surface. It would just be this heavy weight that you carry around, but there's no release. And so you just carry that around. But it was really when I recognized the emotions I was feeling and gave myself permission and allowed myself to experience whatever it was I was experiencing. And along with some of these really hard emotions came a lot of joy. So as I've lived in this past year and a half, I'm also raising two young kids. And there's a lot of joy around that. And giving yourself permission to feel some of these moments of joy, but also knowing that grief can coexist. You don't have to feel one without the other. Often these emotions do coexist. And that's what I've really learned, especially through a lot of these experiences, that you're going to experience a mixture of emotions, and that's okay. That is, that it's natural to feel that way, to feel a mixture of emotions and to give yourself again that permission to feel that and recognize that and even say to yourself, I know why I'm feeling this way. I understand why I'm feeling this way. And really acknowledge the truth of how you feel. I think that's such a huge thing, is not downplaying it, recognizing this is a really hard situation you're in. This has been a really challenging situation that you're going through. And even say this to yourself. There's so many moments I would say that to myself and say, this is really challenging. I know why you feel this way. I'm here for you. I've got you. I'm going to be with you throughout this. And it's literally those things that you say to yourself. It's like the things that you wish somebody else would say to you. You give it to yourself because when you validate your own emotional experience, you give yourself the comfort in knowing that you're not going anywhere and you're going to honor yourself and take care of yourself and make you feel safe in this moment. Then it allows that to release easier. And I found that comforting myself, acknowledging myself, validating myself has been the biggest blessing in my life because it has allowed me to accept a lot of these scenarios and allow myself to process some of the emotions that have come up through them. Number three is start asking yourself the right questions. So, for much of my life, I would ask the questions that really was almost putting myself in this victim mentality. It was like, why is this happening to me? What else is going to go wrong? What else could happen? And really, when you ask yourself those questions, you're giving yourself that self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going to find answers to keep you stuck in that place. And it's a very helpless place. It feels like you're just at the mercy of life happening to you. And when I started to ask myself different questions, more empowering questions, even though I may not have had the answers when I asked them, it made all the difference. It allowed me to see things differently, gain a different perspective. And some of the questions I've asked myself is, what is the lesson here? What do I need to learn? How do I move forward? How do I start to heal? What is it that I need in this moment? And again, I may not have had the answers at the time, but it was those questions that have allowed me to move forward, to realize that I'm not a victim of my circumstances. Really horrible things have happened, and I acknowledge that. And I also have the power to see meaning and purpose in my life and my experiences. And that has really given me so much peace in some of these situations that I would have never consciously chosen for my life and to experience, but I can see also what I have gained. And through this year and a half, I have gained such an appreciation for life. I have gained such an appreciation for emotional expression within myself, allowing myself to feel emotionally safe and sound, allowing my kids to feel emotionally safe and sound. I've gained such an appreciation for doing what you want now, pursuing your dreams now, acknowledging yourself now, accepting yourself now, starting to love yourself now. I put so many of these things on the back burner for so many years, thinking one day life will just get smooth and then I'll figure it out and it'll all just magically happen. Well, it doesn't. It only happens when you start prioritizing yourself and recognizing that you are worthy of your own love. You are innately valuable. You are innately worthy, and you are innately loved within this world and within yourself. And it was only when I started to realize that I am enough. And really, through this year and a half of having my own back and recognizing that I can support myself, I can acknowledge the emotional aspects of what I'm going through, and really to validate and love myself through it has been the most empowering thing. So even though circumstances have been horrendous and there's incredible, incredible grief and sadness, and times you feel absolutely broken, there's also times where you can recognize that you have this value and appreciation for yourself and life that has gained an incredible depth to it, that you see life differently and you are no longer the same person you were before all these experiences. And so I want to share these with you because these are three things that have really helped me navigate some of the most challenging times in my life. And again, if you're going through anything and if any of this has resonated with you, I want you to recognize that you will have the entire spectrum of emotions. You will experience many things, and that is okay. And your experience will be different than mine. But through it all, you still need to love yourself. Through it all, you still need to acknowledge yourself, validate yourself, and recognize that even though maybe you wouldn't have chosen this, that in some way, everything has a purpose and has a meaning behind it. And if we can empower ourselves and love ourselves through it, it allows us to flow with life a little bit easier. And so I hope this helps. And I hope this allows you to flow with your life a little bit easier. Thanks for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Rewiring Health. I hope you found our conversation both enlightening and empowering. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to Rewiring Health so that you never miss an update. Also, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you could take a moment to rate and review the show, it would mean the world to me and help others discover the power that we all have within us to create change and create the life that we truly, truly desire. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with me and sharing the energy of the show.